Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Marriage is Tougher Than Woodpecker Lips podcast. This is Brian.
And I'm Paul. We'd like to welcome you to a community meant for the men of the world to share our thoughts and perspectives on marriage.
We can learn from each other's experiences and help each other be better husbands. Now, let's get right into the show.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. For those, this is your first time, welcome. For those who have been here, we appreciate you checking back in and seeing what we're talking about. Today, we are going to talk about clarity and communication and how they are not the same. This episode spurred from a podcast that I was watching the other day, The Basement with Tim Ross, and he had a guest, a sex therapist, on talking about communication and connection. And so we're just going to throw a clip on it and then talk about it.
Yeah, make sure that you link up with us on our social media, searching Marriage is Tougher through Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and then also link up with us on marriageistuffer.com. If you'd like to be a guest, you can go there, fill out a short form, give us your ideas. We'll get you on the show. Or if you just want to continue the conversation on any of our topics, Marriage is Tougher is what you search, and on Instagram is where you have those conversations. So let's get right into this show.
All right. So like I said in the intro, this episode was spurred by The Basement with Tim Ross and the guest that he had. So we're going to drop this clip and then just have a discussion on how it affected us.
Safety.
And I've worked with professional communicators.
Yeah.
Who are terrible relational communicators. Terrible.
Take your time, girl. Take your time.
So just because you are good, clarity and connection are not the same thing. And the transaction that happens in business is not the same thing as the intimacy that needs to be happening in a relationship. So we're talking about a different type of communication. Wow. And if you are not using your feeling words, you are not connecting.
Ooh, you just exposed and helped a lot of relationships at the same time.
Facts. I feel exposed.
100%.
That's wild, man.
Yeah. Blew my mind.
So, and like I told you, this is right on time. In our last therapy session, this actually came up, right? And it was funny because the therapist asked me, like, well, how do you communicate outside of your relationship? And I just went right into, oh, well, like, I've been in sales for years. Like, I do this and the third. Like, I've been in customer service, like, phone calls. I've been a leader, right? I have no problem communicating and just expressing myself when it comes to work matters, right? My issue is, and I think I even shared this with the therapist and with my wife, the issue is in that arena, I typically have the mentality of delegation, right? So when I'm communicating, I expect this to be done. Go, right? For just to make it quick and to put it into context. And I find often when I communicate with my wife, it kind of comes out the same, right? So as a leader, I make all these considerations. This is where the business needs to go. These are the things that need to happen, right? This is who's going to be affected. I might talk to another leader about it. What do you think about it? Okay, cool. Now execute, right? And I'll communicate that down through the chain. This needs to happen here, go take it. This needs to happen here, go take it, right? And it's rare, which I probably should be better at this at work as well, but it's rare that with simple things, at least, I'll ask for feedback from a subordinate, right? Because if it's a simple task, it's just, hey, I need this done. Can you get that done for me? Thanks. Boom. And then when I speak to my wife, if I'm trying to communicate something, I go through a similar process of considering all the things and then I'll make a decision and I'll say, hey, this is what I want to do. Right. And so most recently it was the purchase of the vehicle. So I had a total vehicle, had to replace it, went through all the considerations for like 3 days straight. Considered her, how she would feel about it, considered our money situation, whether we should just pay cash for the new vehicle, should we get a loan, this, that, and the third, right? Went through pricing tiers, like the truck that I would really want, right? Wasn't going to spend that much money. Went all the way down to the bottom of could just spend 15, 17K. Not going to be what I want. Not going to be able to trust the truck. I'd rather just get something in the middle. Boom, boom, boom. All the consideration, right? Brought her, showed her a picture of like, hey, this is what I want to get. And she's like, what? I didn't make her a part of the conversation. Like, this is my partner. This is my equal, right? She's supposed to have input. I'm supposed to let her be a part of the conversation. And I did not do that. I just delegated.
Man, that's such a good example, right? Because when you're so used to doing something a certain way, right? So all throughout your work life, this is how you've been communicating. All throughout basically your adult responsibility life, this is how you've been communicating. Now you're married with a person, and we still work more than we're at home most of the time. Or our communication actions happen more at work than at home. We may be with a person, but when we're working, we're going to communicate more than we're at home because you just have the ability to talk to more people or more chances to have different communications. So you're still doing that primarily that style of communication is needed at work. But at home, we have to have a different, and with our wife, we have to have a different type of communication. And that really resonates with me, like going through all the options and trying to consider. But wouldn't it be better just to have that person alongside the journey to get their actual consideration, not what we think they'll consider? Or, I mean, even if we know someone really well and we know how they'll react to something, it's still better to have that reaction in real time, just in case by chance this is the outlier that pushes them to react a different way. And then instead of having that after we've already made our decision, and now we feel like we're getting pushback, or for me, feel like it's like rejection, right? We could have that in the beginning stages to just have a perspective. Like, have you looked at it this way? Instead of being like, oh, I made my decision, roll with it. And then she's like, what? No, hold on, step back. What are we doing here? Right. Yeah. And yeah, it just becomes, like she said in the clip, it's just like transactional. Like we're just having a conversation for an outcome. Like I give this happens, and this is what it is. That's not loving or relational. And it for sure, like she said, is not intimacy, and it's not connection.
That piece right there, it's not loving, right? Now, I could see how some men could struggle with this, right? Because I'm supposed to be the leader of the household. She should fall in line with the decisions I make. I could see that. The problem is that if you're claiming that your marriage is a partnership, then you're operating outside of that partnership, right? It takes two signatures, put it that way. Right. Like, so most recently, again, with the whole truck thing, truck got totaled, insurance sent us a check, right? It was addressed to me, but both of our names were on the check. All I wanted to do was go deposit the check, and they turned me away. They're like, oh, we need a signature from both of you. I'm like, what? I'm trying to put it in a joint account. Like, I don't understand. They're like, yeah, they'll send it back. Like, need both signatures. Like, this seems silly to me, but I mean, same scenario, right? It's not like she didn't know what I was doing.
End point, right?
It just seemed crazy to me. But yeah, man, I think that's a good thing to keep in mind. 2 signatures, especially on a decision that big.
Right. Right. And if you practice with smaller quote unquote decisions, then it doesn't feel weird involving our wives in the big decisions. Right. So that's a challenge for me to practice it in all spaces. That signature, that's a good piece. Because right, just being, even if you consider, if you consider yourself egalitarian and like we're partners, like even if there's still, I'm the head or whatever, a headship is not dictatorship.
Right.
Let's just be clear about that. Headship is not dictatorship. A dictator can do what they want, whenever they want, however they want, and let the chips fall wherever. If you claim, we're doing this as a partnership, or if we claim, if you, are a Christian and you claim to follow, loving Christ, how Christ loved the church, and that's how you love your wife, and you are the head, headship is not a dictatorship, right? So keep that in mind in all of your decisions, right? Because if we use this example that Brian used, like basically he and I do the same, like went through all the steps without her and then brought her this is what I'd like to do, instead of each piece of the process saying, here, this is what I'm thinking about, what do you think, do you have any ideas, what's your input, what's your feedback. That is being a partner. That is being a leader, right? A good leader takes input and feedback and does what's best for everyone, not just themselves. And most of the time does what's best for the people that he's leading more than the people that more than him or herself.
Yeah. And what I'm thinking now is, what would it have hurt for her to go through the process with me, right? I said I went 3 days of all the considerations. And what first came to my mind, because I'm actually considering this now, is there was a slight potential that she would have stopped me from looking at the top end that I knew I wasn't going to buy, but had a little bit of fun of looking at. Right. So, like, yeah, I mean, because you're looking at the new trucks, and even in like the newer used trucks, wasn't going to spend that money. Wasn't in the realm of possibility.
Right. You
But it
knew
was
you weren't going to.
right.
Either
But it
way.
was fun to consider it.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a possibility if I had brought her into that part of it, she'd have been like, nope. Right. And now I'm feeling rejected, and maybe it goes a different way. But that's my problem that I have to process.
Right. That's
Right.
not a her issue. That's a
Exactly.
us issue. Right. That's not
Exactly.
their issue.
So I didn't want to feel that pain of that small piece of potential rejection. Right. But that's probably me just making stuff up in my head. And this is conjecture, but if that were the case, now I started a process of doing all of the steps without her, even beyond the top end truck, right? Once I got past that, I could have then included her,
Mm-hmm.
but I started down the rabbit hole and just kept going until I came to a decision, right? And it was the appropriate decision. The argument could be made that my wife trusts me to make these decisions, but that doesn't mean that she shouldn't be part of the conversation, part of the decision.
Yeah, that is the. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, maybe if I made her part of the decision, she would have found me a better vehicle.
That part. Yeah, I mean, that is that is what makes this connection and clarity aren't the same, because you were very clear on what you want to do, how you want to do it, what's the best way you should do it. The connection part that changes it from a transaction to intimacy is just letting her in, right? Letting her know, giving her a space to have thoughts about it, right? To hear how she feels, to say how you feel, right? Even if you use, the top end, like, I know we're not going to do this, but it feels good to just look and see what's out there. Like,
Could have said that.
Basically, or it's just like you put her there and you say, talk me out of this, right? And then you guys both kind of have fun with that idea, like, man, it'd be really nice to have this, blah, 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 blah. But this isn't a part of our goal. We have this goal, this goal, this goal. So right now it's not. But we can put this, up on the vision board for when we reach that goal. This is the next thing we can start tackling, right? And even to do that together brings you in unity, right? And even if you preface it with like, I know we can't afford this right now, but I just want to look at it. And she can say, okay, go ahead and do it. Or, oh, I'd like to look at it with you. But it's giving her an option. That is connection. You're trying to connect on every level, and every little space that you can connect brings intimacy into your relationship.
Yep. And gentlemen, you need to hear what I'm about to say. And specifically, I needed to hear what my wife said. Again, I brought this up in counseling, right? Working on communication. That once I told that story, the therapist asked Katie, how did that make you feel? Right. And so I turned to my wife, and not so often do I really open my ears in the way that I did in that moment. Okay. She said, that makes me feel like I'm not heard. That makes me feel like I'm not considered. It makes me feel like my opinion doesn't matter. It makes me feel like it isn't a relationship. That hurt me because it wasn't my intent, right? I wanted to just go through the process for the most part, right? And bring it to her. And the funny thing about it is I knew we were going to have a conversation about it when I brought it to her, which goes back to what we were talking about off air, is I have to be better about how I present things, right? The way I brought it to her seemed to be, and it was, just a very, hey, I made this decision, let's roll. My intent was actually to have a conversation with it or about it, because I knew that's where we were going anyway. So even if I had, and which obviously I did, made all these considerations, the conversation or the approach to my wife should have been, hey, I've been thinking about this for the last few days. I want your input. This is where I landed, but I would appreciate your opinion, right? Help me make a decision. And that's just not what she got. So like you said on the podcast before, right? We can make all of these considerations and then bring them to our wife, but we have to be ready and open for her to react, right? She's going to want to probably go through a similar process. To save time, you should probably just do it together, but you have to be willing to listen to her reaction and give her time to process. And I was willing to do that. I just didn't approach it in the right way.
Yeah, a lot of times we think we're saving time and energy.
Yeah.
But if we consider the connection and intimacy that happens if we just take a little bit more time, that outweighs the time that we save, right? Because when you can connect with your wife, any chance you can connect with your wife, you need to jump on that chance to do it, because that makes her feel valued, seen, and heard. Whether our intent is just to either not bother or get this done quickly, that doesn't matter, comparatively speaking. The connection, if we can change our mindset to realize connection is more valuable than time saved, I think we'll be in a lot better place as husbands when we're looking to communicate and we're looking to connect and be intimate with our wives.
That piece, man. That connection. There's anytime we get in this realm, I always think of this other couple that we're very close friends with, but from the outside perspective, right? We don't always know. They seem to have that connection, right? And it seems to be through all of their decision making. It seems to be through just witnessing them interact together as friends, right? We should get him on the podcast specifically, but I'm going to see them later today. I may pose that question and have them kind of dive into it off air about what that dynamic is and how it works for them. I'll get some feedback.
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely going to say, hey, you need to present that to them and see if they got some secret sauce for the rest of us, right? Like, that's amazing. It's good to have that example to look up to and kind of gleam to and say, hey, what are you doing? Which is, another thing we preach on this podcast is find a community of people that you can walk alongside with in your marriage. That can help. But yeah, as we're coming on time, do you have anything else?
Yeah, I was gonna potentially just peel this Band-Aid off. I mean,
Okay.
what if it's just a mindset thing? What if the answer to my question is, well, I just like really love my wife. I really like, she is my friend. Right? Like, these are just conversations friends have. Like, what's wrong with you? You know what I'm saying? Like,
that makes perfect sense. Like, ultimately, everything is a mindset shift.
Right. That was a close one.
So if we can shift that and just realize this is not a work transaction. This is a connection with my person.
Yes. The therapist said that as well. She talked to us, specifically me, about putting work down when I get home. And so this is something that I need to work on. And I told her, I always feel when I get home, it's just another job, for a lack of better words, right? Like, it's get home, give my wife a break, right into daddy duty. I don't get to spend a ton of time with my kids. So when I get home, that's what I want, right? It gives her opportunity to go, finish whatever she was attempting to do, cook dinner, this, that, and a third, right? And so I heavily engage with my kids. The therapist said, try just changing your clothes. She said for her, you know, her kids seemed to think that she was still in therapist mode when she got home, right? So that was the way she was communicating and interacting with her children. And so she tried just changing clothes because, you know, she has to dress up, she's like pantsuit, that type of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's like, I went and put some sweats on and it relaxed me, right? It like shoulders drop. And so that's something I need to work on to just to see if that transition gets me into home life, right? And I don't wear a suit and tie to work anymore,
Mm-hmm.
but my brain still works that way, right? I'm still making those types of decisions, still having those types of interactions. So I don't know if that'll work, but it's worth a try. It's worth exploring how to transition through my door, to leave work at the door or out on the porch.
Yeah, I think that's good because even if it's a 5 minute change, right, it just allows you to realize I'm at home now, right? Like I'm literally taking time to swap out something that is work, you know, to now be home. Because you're still going to be present and you're still going to be there. It just
Right.
gives you time, like from your car door to your front door to where you're changing to kind of transition. Like, okay, I'm home now. I'm home now, right? I'm home now when I pull in the driveway. I'm home now when I walk through the door, but now I'm really home as I'm changing my clothes. And it's like 3 different tiers where you can start to break down that barrier. I love that. That's really good.
And just like she said in the clip, clarity and connection are not the same. Your presence and connection are not the same, right? You being there doesn't make a relationship.
That piece.
Yeah.
Wow. That's it, right? Yeah, because ultimately we want to connect within our marriage, right? Like that is the reason why we got married, to live in a life connected with this other person. You know, an
And
intimate
gentlemen,
bond moving forward.
yes, sir. And gentlemen, when you want to execute on your desires and you've left the connection off the table, you wonder why she might not be in the mood. If you haven't filled her tank, man. I'm gonna leave y'all on that. Think about it.
Yeah, as we wrap up this podcast, there's nothing else to be said. We appreciate you taking the time um, to have a conversation with us. To further this conversation, please reach out with us on our socials, searching Marriage is Tougher. That's Instagram, that's Facebook, that's YouTube. If you'd like to be a guest, please hop on our website, marriageisttougher.com, and there's a form at the bottom. And also you can see the list of all our episodes in order on there as well. So we just thank you again for spending some time with us. Hopefully this conversation was beneficial. I know it was for us as we were having it and being able to, you know, process this topic. So we appreciate you and have a great day.
Deuces.